Empire State of Morocco, United States for America, Moorish National Republic Federal Government, Societas Republicae e Americanas, Moorish Divine and National Movement of the World, Northwest Amexem, Northwest Africa, North America, the North Gate, and the adjoining Americana Islands, Temple of the Moon and Sun, the true and de jure natural peoples, heirs of the land. Islam, I self, law, am master. Empire State of Morocco, universal, sovereign, original, indigenous, ancient, natural, divine affidavit. Empire State of Morocco, United States of America, Moorish National Republic Federal Government, Societas Republicae e Americanas, Moorish Divine and National Movement of the World, Northwest Amexem, Northwest Africa, North America, the North Gate, and the adjoining Americana Islands, Temple of the Moon and Sun, the true and de jure natural peoples, heirs of the land. Islam, I self, law, am master. Empire State of Morocco, universal, sovereign, original, indigenous, ancient, natural, divine affidavit. Notice to agent is notice to principal, and notice to principal is notice to agent. Moorish American Moroccan consular court action, command to appear. macx+cause, macx+cause 000000222. Cause of action, unlawful occupation of sovereign, original, indigenous land. Date of action, Thursday, September 15, 1442, 2022, on the Greco-Roman calendar. Time of action, 3:33 post-meridian Eastern Standard Time. Platform, freeconferencecall.com, Shasha Ande, Amaru Nation. Dial-in 1-720-527-5882. Access code 7283163. All rise and stand, and remain standing into perpetuity. This is a sovereign, living, ancient Article 3 Moorish American Moroccan court action. I am sovereign, living justice Sharon and Peart Johnson in capitis diminutio nolo in red ink, in proprio persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. My free chosen national appellation is Shasha Ande, and my matrimonial appellation is Sharon and Martini. Both two are in capitis diminutio nolo, in red ink, in proprio persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. I and all Moors are the original, indigenous, sovereign, ancient, Moroccan, Moorish American ascendants of the great pharaohs of Kemet and of the ancient Moabites and Canaanites. Our full faith and trust, our allegiance, our credit, and our energy are hereby vested in ourselves, for we are the people who are the original, indigenous, natural, divine, ancient Empire State of Morocco and the de jure Moorish National Republic Federal Government. We are one God. We hereby exercise all sovereign rights at this time and at all points in time, nunc pro tunc. Each of you debtors are hereby commanded to appear at the de jure Article 3 Moorish American Consular Court to state your name and nationality for the record to the universal, sovereign, original, indigenous, natural, divine people who are the sovereign, living Empire State of Morocco and the de jure Moorish National Republic Federal Government. This universal, ancient, original, indigenous, Moroccan, Moorish American Article 3 Consular Court is the sovereign jurisdiction over all matters at all points in time on our land. All of your commerce and that of all agents, principals, heirs, assigns, and all derivatives thereof is hereby terminated by way of sovereign universal commercial code 1 lien. The American Provost Marshal has been notified, and failure to appear is just cause for your arrest, imprisonment, and decapitation. All foreign United States corporation, company, corporations, citizens, persons are unlawful at ancient Morocco, nunc pro tunc. This sovereign justice stands, and in is lower. Septimus Blake, doing business as custodial president, Jamaica Bankers Association, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Ainsley Powell, doing business as Commissioner General, Jamaica Tax Administration, and all heirs, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Janet Hedge Murray, doing business as custodial administrative assistant, Jamaica Tax Administration. Carrie Ann Clunas, doing business as custodial administrative assistant, Jamaica Tax Administration. HM Revenue and Customs, Jim Harra, doing business as custodial first permanent secretary and chief executive, HM Revenue and Customs. Kilojo Kijakazi, doing business as custodial commissioner, United States Social Security Administration Company, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Abby Tierney, doing business as custodial director general, registrar general for England and Wales, Her Majesty's Passport Office and UK Visas and Immigration, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Brian Sykes, doing business as custodial chief justice, the Supreme Court of Jamaica, Office of the Chief Justice, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Chester Crooks, doing business as custodial chief judge of the parish courts, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Nicholas Jones, doing business as custodial chairman of the board, Rural Agricultural Development Authority, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Winston Simpson, doing business as custodial chief executive officer, Rural Agricultural Development Authority, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Peter Thompson, doing business as custodial manager, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. And that is the Royal Agricultural Development Authority. Kenneth Richards, doing business as custodial Archbishop of Jamaica, Roman Catholic Diocese of Kingston, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Howard Kingsley Ainsworth Gregory, doing business as custodial Archbishop of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, Diocese of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Stuart Cockburn, doing business as custodial chief executive officer, Covenant Insurance Brokers Limited, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Pauline Bruce, doing business as custodial manager, Covenant Insurance Brokers Limited, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Yvette Jones, doing business as custodial customer service representative, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Aldine Carter, doing business as custodial receptionist, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Covenant Insurance Brokers Limited. Winston Morale, doing business as custodial mayor, Clarendon Municipal Corporation, all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Donovan Mitchell, doing business as custodian in the office of mayor, Manchester Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Winston Palmer, doing business as custodial chief executive officer, Manchester Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Norman Scott, doing business as custodian in the office of mayor, St. Catherine Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Andre Griffiths, doing business as custodial chief executive officer, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Bertel Moore, doing business as custodian in the office of mayor, Westmoreland Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Marvel N. Pitter, doing business as custodial chief executive officer, Westmoreland Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Delroy Williams, doing business as custodian in the office of mayor, Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Robert Hill, doing business as custodian in custodial chief executive officer, Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Richard Creary, doing business as custodian in the office of Mayor, St. Mary Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Ethelyn Douglas, doing business as custodial chief executive officer, St. Mary Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Sheridan Samuels, doing business as custodian in the office of Mayor, Hanover Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. David Gardner, doing business as custodial chief executive officer, Hanover Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Leon Thomas, doing business as custodian in the office of Mayor, Portmore Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Nadia Crosskill, doing business as custodian or chief executive officer, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Sydney Stewart, doing business as custodian in the office of Mayor, St. Anne's Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Rovell Morris, doing business as custodian in the office of Chief Executive Officer, St. Anne's Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Paul Thompson, doing business as custodian in the office of Mayor, Portland Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Jennifer Brown Cunningham, doing business as custodial chief executive officer, Portland Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Michael Hugh, doing business as custodian in the office of Mayor, St. Thomas Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Claudia Carter, doing business as custodial chief executive officer, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Colleen Gager, doing business as custodian in the office of Mayor, Trelawney Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Andrew Harrison, doing business as custodian in the office of chief executive officer, Trelawney Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Leroy Williams, doing business as custodian in the office of Mayor, St. Thomas Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Gerald Lee, doing business as custodian in the office of Chief Executive Officer, St. James's Municipal Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Ian Deere, doing business as custodian in the office of chairman of the board, Jamaica Tourism Products Development Company Limited, TPD Co., and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Wade Mars, doing business as custodian executive director, Jamaica Tourism Product Development Company Limited, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Laura Heron, doing business as custodian in the office of deputy chairman, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Christopher Jarrett, doing business as custodian in the office of director, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Jamaica Tourism Product Development Company Limited. Marilyn Burrows, doing business as custodian in the office of director, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Jamaica Tourism Product Development Company. Varna Taylor, doing business as custodial director, and all Jamaica Tourism Product Development Company Limited, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Johnny Garzong, doing business as custodial director, and all Jamaica Tourism Product Development Company Limited, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Robin DeLissa, doing business as custodial director, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Christopher Wims Stone, doing business as custodial director, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Michael Bow, doing business as custodial director, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Jamaica Tourism Product Development Company Limited. Paul Laylor, doing business as custodial chairman, Jamaica Library Service, JLS, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Maureen Thompson, doing business as Custodial Director General and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof, Jamaica Library Service. Andrew Winter, doing business as Custodial and Chief Executive Officer, Passport and Immigration and Citizenship Agency and all heirs, assigned, principal, agents and derivatives thereof. Hans Vestberg, doing business as Custodial Chief Executive Officer, Verizon Communications Inc. and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Brian Sykes, doing business as Custodial Chief Justice, the Supreme Court of Jamaica, Office of the Chief Justice, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Chester Crooks, doing business as Custodial Chief Judge of the Parish Court, and all heirs, Supreme Court of Jamaica, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Nigel Clark, doing business as Custodial Chairman of the Board, National Housing Trust, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Godfrey Dyer, doing business as Custodial Chairman, Tourism Enhancement Fund, TEF, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Archibald Campbell, doing business as Custodial Chairman, JMMB Insurance Brokers Limited, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Keith Duncan, doing business as Custodial Group Chief Executive Director, JMMB Insurance Brokers Limited, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Everton Hunter, doing business as Custodial Chief Executive Officer, National Works Agency, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Velma Ricketts Walker, doing business as Custodial CEO, Custodian in the Office of Commissioner of Customs, Jamaica Customs Agency, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Joseph Patterson, doing business as Custodian in the Office of President, United Independence Congress of Jamaica, UIC, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Keith Duncan, doing business as Custodian in the Office of Chief Executive Officer, Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, PSOJ, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Evalina Dimitrova, doing business as Custodial Director, Shipwise Limited, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Septimus Blake, doing business as Custodian in the Office of Chief Executive Officer, National Commercial Bank Jamaica, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Michael Lee Chin, doing business as Custodial Director and National Commercial Bank Jamaica, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Patrick Hilton, doing business as Custodial Chairman, National Commercial Bank Jamaica, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Dennis Cohen, doing business as Custodial Director, National Commercial Bank Jamaica, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Robert Almeida, doing business as Custodial Director, National Commercial Bank Jamaica, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Sandra Glasgow, doing business as Custodial Director and all National Commercial Bank Jamaica, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Sonia Goff, doing business as Custodial Director, National Commercial Bank Jamaica, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Alvin Wintz, doing business as Custodial Director, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. National Commercial Bank Jamaica. Brian Monahan, doing business as Chairman of the Board, Custodial Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer, Bank of America Corporation, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Julian Mayer, doing business as Custodian Chairman, Jamaica Stock Exchange, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Marlene Street Forrest, doing business as Custodial in the Office of Managing Director, Jamaica Stock Exchange, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Mark Myers, doing business as Custodial CEO, Barita Investments Limited, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Michael Bodson, doing business as Custodian in the Office of President and Chief Executive Officer, Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, Seed and Company, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Dennis Cohen, doing business as Custodian in the Office of Chairman of the Board, Advantage General Insurance Company Limited, AGI, and all heirs, assigned, principals, agents and derivatives thereof. Christopher Zaka, doing business as custodian in the Office of President and CEO, Sagicor Group Jamaica Limited, and all heirs, assigns, principals, and agents and derivatives thereof. Gary Allen, doing business as custodian in the Office of Chief Executive Officer, Radio Jamaica Limited, RJR, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Joseph Matalon, doing business as custodian in the Office of Chairman, Radio Jamaica Limited, RJR, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Lawrence Nicholson, doing business as custodial deputy chairman, Radio Jamaica Limited, RJR, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Richard Biles, doing business as custodian in the Office of Governor and Chairman, Bank of Jamaica, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Kevin Hendrickson, doing business as custodian in the Office of Managing Director, Pegasus Hotels of Jamaica Limited, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Kevin Hendrickson, doing business as custodian in the Office of Director, Surrey Hotel Management Limited, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Kevin Hendrickson, doing business as custodian in the Office of Director, Courtly Hospitality Group, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. Paul Abrahams, doing business as custodian in the Office of Managing Director, Jamaica Urban Transit Company, and all heirs, assigns, principals, agents, and derivatives thereof. This sovereign justice stands and is the supreme law for the land. All sovereign, original, indigenous, ancient, divine, Moorish, American autographs affirming this and all sovereign, original, indigenous, ancient, Empire State of Morocco, and the de jure Moorish National Republic federal government documents are on the public record at America, ancient Morocco, Northwest Amexem, Northwest Africa, the North Gate, Turtle Island, Gaia, Midgard, Earth, Chronos, time immemorial, into perpetuity. This lawful de jure Article 3, our Moroccan consular court action is now adjourned.